months under President Biden's, since President Biden was inaugurated as President of the United States. Time flies when we're having fun, right, everyone? Okay. And this afternoon, he'll be holding his second meeting with the full cabinet. This meeting will be the first to take place in the cabinet room, and the president will discuss several important topics with cabinet members, including COVID-19, the bipartisan infrastructure framework, and the Build Back Better agenda, climate, and a national security update following up from the Europe trip, and our latest cybersecurity efforts, so a robust agenda. Since taking office, the president has acted to get America back on track by addressing the crises facing this nation, vaccinating America to beat the pandemic, delivering much needed help to American families, making transformative investments to rescue and rebuild our economy, and fundamentally showing that government can deliver for the American people. Of course, they'll discuss a range of topics at the meeting. Also today, top CEOs representing some of the most dynamic American companies across our economy called for support and passage of the bipartisan infrastructure framework. The CEOs from GM, Delta Airlines, Nike, Walmart, Bank of America, and more make up Build Together's CEO working group, which recognizes the need to invest in our national infrastructure and the positive impact the BIF would have on our economy for decades to come. Today, we also wish all those observing and celebrating Eid a safe and wonderful holiday. As many know, the Eid and Hajj rituals are a reminder of the importance of providing for those less fortunate, particularly during challenging times, and Islam's commitment to equality and the common roots of the world's Abrahamic faiths. As mentioned in the President's statement today, the United States is committed to working with the international community to emerge stronger from the pandemic, and thousands of Muslim Americans are among those eager to perform the pilgrimage next year. Finally, just wanted to note, we support, there's been, of course, some activity on the Hill I'm sure we'll talk about. We support Senator Schumer's efforts to move forward on the bipartisan infrastructure framework and very much appreciate the hard work until late in the night, including last night, by both Democratic and Republican senators to resolve open issues. Progress is continuing to be made thanks to all the hard work, and we back Senator Schumer's effort to get this to the floor as quickly as possible. Amr, why don't you kick us off?
Eva Mubarak to you. An aide to Speaker Pelosi tested positive for COVID after having contact with the Texas delegation that's been around. Can you confirm that a White House official has also tested positive? And I'm wondering, what does that mean for the prospects of the Texas delegation being able to sit down with the president at some point at the White House?
Sure. Well, first, let me confirm that yesterday a fully vaccinated White House official tested positive for COVID-19 off campus. In accordance with our rigorous COVID-19 protocols, the official remains off campus as they wait for a confirmatory PCR test. The White House Medical Unit has conducted contact tracing interviews and determined no close contacts among White House principals or staff or the president. The individual has mild symptoms. We know that there will be breakthrough cases, but as this instance shows, cases in vaccinated individuals are typically mild. The White House is prepared for breakthrough cases with regular testing. This is another reminder of the efficacy of the COVID-19 vaccines against severe illness or hospitalizations. And of course, we wish our colleague a speedy recovery. In terms of a meeting, there has not been a meeting planned, and there hasn't been change to that, so I wouldn't say it has an impact on that.
And if I could follow on something that you touched on yesterday.
Sure.
Vaccination rates in Europe are pretty similar to what they are in the United States, but travel is one way right now. I'm wondering, does the president believe it's safe for Americans to travel to Europe, but it's not safe for Europeans to travel here? If you could, there seems to be a little bit of mixed messaging that some may perceive.
Sure. Well, as you know, the CDC regularly updates our travel guidelines for international travel. I think they even did an update today, and they provide guidance to whether it is safe to travel to certain countries or parts of the world. And of course, American citizens make their own decisions. As it relates to travel restrictions to come to the United States, any decisions about reopening international travel will be guided by our own public health and medical experts. As we said, we've launched our interagency working groups with partner countries. Those are continuing to have discussions. Those decisions will be made based on public health guidelines. We don't see it as a conflict. We give American citizens guidelines. They make their own decisions about whether they travel to certain countries around the world, and we will continue to be guided by public health guidelines on how we reopen travel to within our borders.
If I may ask just one brief more.
Sure.
Yesterday's meeting with the King of Jordan, is the topic of the suspect in the 2001 Sbarro bombing that's still living in Jordan freely, did a call for extradition come up?
It's a great question. Beyond the readout that we put out, I have not had a further discussion with our national security team. I'm happy to ask them and see if there's more we can provide to all of you.
Thank you.
Okay, Kelly, go ahead.
Have there been any other cases of breakthrough COVID among the White House staff? And would you commit to publicly confirming cases if others occur in the future?
There have been. I will say that we, according to an agreement we made during the transition to be transparent and make information available, we committed that we would release information proactively if it is commissioned officers. We continue to abide by that commitment.
Does this give you any sense of changing protocols related to the president, the vice president, other senior staff, based on this set of facts, given the fact you've always said vaccinations, while very helpful, are not foolproof? So should there be a different posture for the president?
Well, our protocols are in alignment with the highest standards and the guidance of our public health experts. So let me just remind you all, because I'm sure you don't have it handy, to what those protocols are that remain in place. Regular testing of those surrounding and meeting with the presidents. For those who have closer proximity, they are tested more regularly than those who have less proximity. Ensuring those interacting with the president are following CDC guidance regarding mask wearing and distancing. Actively monitoring the health of our campus and the larger community in collaboration with public health and medical experts. We have a robust infrastructure to ensure compliance with these protocols, and we're asking staff to also monitor themselves for symptoms and stay off campus if they develop symptoms. So the news today is that while breakthrough cases will happen, the vaccines are effective and prevent against serious illness and death. We've seen that statistically across the country, with 99.5% of cases in hospitals being for individuals who are not vaccinated. And we will continue to abide by CDC guidelines.
Briefly, you did say there were others. Can you quantify what number are we talking about? How many breakthrough cases have you had?
I don't have more details on that. I will see if there's more we can provide.
You also talk about setting ambitious goals and assessments for a whole range of things on your agenda. Since it is at the 6-month point, how would you assess where the president's agenda is and how much has he accomplished in his first 6 months? And where are you concerned about perhaps being behind on some of his agenda items?
Yeah. Well, first, when the president took office, he knew that his #1 priority would be getting the pandemic under control. When he took office, there were more than 190,000 COVID cases and 3,000 deaths per day. Now we're at about 27,000 cases and 220 deaths per day. Is there more work to be done? Absolutely, and we are continuing. We're still at it and fighting the pandemic. But that was his #1 priority since when he took office. His #2 priority, or they're related, I should say, was getting the economy jump started. And that was why he focused so much attention and effort and blood, sweat, and tears on getting the American Rescue Plan passed, getting that assistance out to the American public. We've seen great progress. Millions of people are working today who were not working the day he took office. We would say that is a step forward. He identified, when he took office, 4 big priorities or crises of his presidency. Health, the pandemic, climate, which we've made some progress on. There's a great deal of progress that will be made in the BIF and also the in the reconciliation package, and addressing racial injustice. Those are crises and those are challenges he will continue to spend his time working toward and making progress on. Go ahead.
Thank you, Jen. More than 10% of the traveling party with these Texas Democrats now claim to have a breakthrough case. Is there any concern that this trip that was intended to advocate for voting rights is now a super spreader event in Washington?
Well, I would say that's not a characterization we're making from here. We certainly understand there will be breakthrough cases. Even vaccines that are incredibly effective are not foolproof. They're not 100% effective. We've seen that. Here's the good news, though. We know that these vaccines, that these individuals, I think, if I'm correct, have been vaccinated. It means that it protects from death, it protects from serious illness, it protects for the most part from hospitalization. So that is a good sign.
Now that COVID-19, after contact with those Democrats, has reached the White House, what is your message to these Texas Democrats?
Our message continues to be thanks for standing up for voting rights and the rights of Americans to have their voices heard at the voting booth, and we appreciate their efforts in that regard.
And certain places are bringing mask mandates back now, including for vaccinated people. What does President Biden think about that?
Well, Peter, we know that some employers, hospitals, health systems, colleges, and universities, which we've seen put in place mask mandates, some large and small employers have chosen to take this step. That's entirely appropriate. That's their decision to make. That's not an initiative we're instituting from the federal government, but we know that companies, private sector employees, health institutions, educational institutions will take steps in order to keep the people in their communities safe.
6 months ago, the president asked Americans to wear masks for 100 days. As the Delta variant spreads, is there a possibility that he's going to make a similar ask down the line?
Well, nothing has changed with the guidance that we are providing to the American public. If you are vaccinated, you do not need to wear a mask. If you are not vaccinated, the public health officials from the federal government recommend you wear a mask. Anything we would determine would be guided by our health and medical experts. Go ahead.
So I just want to back up here to this breakthrough case here at the White House. You
Yeah.
confirmed today there's been a breakthrough case,
Yep.
but you're also confirming there have been other breakthrough cases.
Yep.
But you had not previously disclosed that there had been.
And that's correct. We had also committed during the transition that I think there's hundreds, thousands of people who work in the federal government, as you all know, and we had committed during the transition that if it was a commissioned officer, who are the highest level ranking people in the White House and in the in this building here, that we would make that information publicly available. We stand by that commitment.
So if it's anyone below that, you don't feel the need to let people know?
Well, again, that's the commitment we made. I'm here talking to all of you today and sharing with you information about the individual who received a positive test yesterday.
Right. More broadly, has there been any more discussion? I know you've been asked this before, but because it continues to happen, has there been any more discussion about having the CDC or some other entity track the number of breakthrough cases?
They do track.
Okay. You have an eviction deadline coming, and there's an event tomorrow on that here at the White House. Curious if you can give a preview of what may be coming in that meeting.
I don't have any preview of a private meeting to share with all of you, no, at this point in time.
And on the Cuba meeting that happened last night, it was a virtual event, a handful of people, primarily from South Florida. Has there been any conversation about having other meetings on that here? Or what more might the president do himself on this issue? What might he do or say?
Sure.
I know the administration continues to monitor it every day, of course.
Well, at the president's direction, we are actively pursuing measures that both the Cuban people, that support both the Cuban people and hold the Cuban regime accountable. And that has been the prism through which the president has made his decisions. So that includes working closely with the private sector and Congress to identify viable options to make the internet more accessible to the Cuban people. We're looking at options. There are a lot of ideas out there. We are also looking to leverage our international organization partners to increase humanitarian assistance flows to Cuba and work with our international partners to both voice concern and put public pressure on, but also work with international organizations. The Treasury Department, via the Office of Foreign Assets Control, will continue to explore designated Cuban officials responsible for violence, repression, and human rights violation against peaceful protesters in Cuba, and we will form a remittance working group to identify the most effective way to get remittances directly into the hands of the Cuban people. On the last piece, I would note that what the president said last week stands, which is that there has been longstanding concern about if you return remittances, if you return to a place where remittances are allowed, that money or funding does not get into the hands of the regime or allow them to pad their pockets. That's certainly something that we're mindful of when we're looking at, that will be a point of discussion in these working groups.
And the president himself hasn't met with any of these people who've met with other White House officials?
I don't have, he has not. We certainly remain open to, as we are engaging at quite a high level. I don't have anything to preview in terms of meetings at his level, but you can tell he's asked his team to take a number of steps and look into a range of options. Go ahead.
Does the White House believe it has enough votes, that people have enough votes to pass the bipartisan infrastructure package tomorrow? What's the White House's view on that?
Well, we are not the vote whip counter in chiefs over here, but I will reiterate that we absolutely support the step by Leader Schumer to move forward yes, is today? Tomorrow. What is today? Yes. I would remind you all that this agreement was reached almost a month ago, and we believe that not only is this achievable, we owe it to the families in red states and blue states who have waited so long for the improvements to their lives for this to have an impact. Less time wasted in traffic, ensuring every American, including in underserved rural areas, get access to broadband. I'd also remind all of you that what we're really talking about here, this is the bill becomes the law portion of our programming today, which I know you're familiar with, but it sounds esoteric, but this is a vote on a motion to proceed to a vehicle, not a vote on the final bill. There's nothing abnormal about holding a vote on a vehicle to allow consideration at this point. We fully support that, and we believe there should be support for it tomorrow. Go ahead.
Just a quick follow-up, thanks, Jen, on Kelly's question. So would the administration ever provide the number of breakthrough cases that have happened within the administration thus far? Should we not expect to receive a number on that?
I said I'd be happy to check on the status of that, sure.
And then on infrastructure, has the president, leading up to this vote tomorrow, Senate Minority Whip John Thune said there's no way they're going to get to 60 votes on this. So can we expect the president to be reaching out personally to Republicans? Has he spoken to Leader Schumer? And if this vote does fail, is that a setback?
Well, yes, he has been in touch with Democrats and Republicans for several days, and that will certainly continue, and it will continue until he has both pieces of legislation on his desk to sign them into law. I think the question I'd flip back is, why not? This is a motion to proceed. It is not a final vote on the legislation. I'd also note that earlier this year, the same sequence was followed on May 17th for the Endless Frontiers bill with strong bipartisan support, in which there was a successful vote to proceed, and then the bill's text was finalized later because the substance was understood. Similarly, also took place with the anti-AAPI hate crimes bill, passed with strong bipartisan support. This is normal process and procedure on Capitol Hill. Those two pieces of legislation received strong bipartisan support. Obviously, there was strong support for motions to proceed. There are no secrets about what's in this legislation. It was agreed to in a bipartisan agreement. The only disagreement right now is around some pay-fors, which we're working through and we're having discussions about. But again, there's ample precedent, and we support Leader Schumer's strategy of moving this forward. Go ahead.
Thanks, Jen. Just a quick question on the White House official testing positive.
Sure.
How is the White House preparing for vaccine hesitancy to go up now that people who are vaccinated are still contracting the virus? I mean, do you expect that to really stop people who are from getting vaccinated around the country?
I don't think we've seen data to suggest that.
Okay. Also, separately, a question on the Olympics. The chief of the Olympics said that the game could still get canceled at the 11th hour, and we know that the First Lady is, as of yesterday, was still planning to travel. But has that changed? And now that this could, get canceled, what does that look like?
There's been no change. She's still planning on attending the games. And she looks forward to supporting, of course, the athletes who are competing on behalf of the United States. We are monitoring the situation closely. Our team will be following very strict safety and health protocols, limiting engagement with the public, keeping our footprint as small as possible. Our COVID team at the White House, as well as health officials at the IOC and the government of Japan, all agree that the stringent protocols and health measures in place will help keep our delegation safe. And I would also note that the President and the First Lady felt it was important to have the delegation led at the highest level, so she is looking forward to continuing her travel.
I have one on space.
Sure. I suspected. There's a little something happening today, yes, or happened, I should say.
Right. So Jeff Bezos made a successful trip to space and back. There is this growing capacity with companies like Blue Origin and SpaceX, and the Vice President obviously leads the National Space Council, and we're wondering if there is any thought being given to using private companies by NASA more and more to reduce the cost of space missions for the U.S. taxpayer. Have there been any discussions on that?
Well, first I would say the United States is the first country to have private companies taking private passengers to space. This is a moment of American exceptionalism. That's how we see it. It will be the ingenuity of all of our commercial partners to help us continue advancing to the next stage of our nation's space exploration. And investments in space create jobs, can improve life here on Earth through climate monitoring and medical advancements, just to name a few. So NASA is excited to see these achievements. Our charter requires that requires that agencies seek and encourage to the maximum extent possible the fullest commercial use of space. So we certainly support these endeavors. Wally Funk is now on my list of people that I would most like to meet in the country. She's America's new sweetheart. Go ahead.
A couple quick follow-ups on infrastructure and then one on COVID.
Sure.
You said that the outstanding issues are paid for related right now. There were some spend side issues that they were trying to figure out as well. Are you saying that those are now wrapped up? That's just paid for? Is that
I was saying we'll leave it to the negotiators working hard into the night last night and continuing their work today. But I would say that one of the issues, or the primary issue, I think it's probably safe to say, is around tax enforcement on the wealthiest Americans who are often able to game the system illegally and dodge paying the taxes they owe at the expense of everyone else. That was agreed to during the negotiations, but support has been withdrawn by some Republican members. We are happy to have discussions about additional options and additional pay-fors. That remains our policy and our approach. The point I was trying to make is that the components of what are in this package, the big pieces that were agreed to, and where the president stood outside of the White House with Democrats and Republicans, are not secret. They're very clear. Everybody knows what they are, and that's the point I was making.
Just for clarity, if the procedural vote, and again, I understand the vehicle and Senate process pretty well, if it does go down, the president's not walking away from these talks, right? Like the bipartisan effort is still the effort he's pursuing, even if Wednesday's vote goes down.
I'm not going to predict a negative outcome. We'll see where we go, and we'll keep discussing where we go from there.
And then just one more quick one. My colleague reported that there have been some high-level discussions, regular high-level discussions between White House officials and Fox News about coverage related to the pandemic and vaccines over the course of the last several weeks and months. Can you elaborate at all in terms of what those entailed, and if you guys feel like you've had an effect on the coverage of those issues?
Sure. Well, let me first say that we've been in touch with every network and many, many media outlets about coverage of COVID-19 to make sure people have accurate information, to voice concerns when we have them. And I think you all know we're never shy when we have an issue with a story. So that's really the frame we're looking at here. So we understand also the importance of reaching Fox's audience about the COVID-19 vaccines and their benefits. And like we are with all of you here today, we of course are in regular contact. And we also make efforts to have officials out on a range of networks to talk about COVID-19. We don't see it as a partisan issue. We don't